1500s, Leonardo da Vinci is painting the Mona Lisa's gentle smile. Meanwhile, in the Netherlands, an artist named Hieronymus Bosch is creating something very different. A massive triptych filled with hybrid creatures, tortured souls, and scenes that would inspire future surrealists like Salvador Dali. This is the story of art history's most beautiful nightmare. Painted by Hieronymus Bosch around 1500, this massive triptych, a 3-panel painting that opens and closes like a book, has captivated and puzzled viewers for over 500 years. Before we dive into the wild world inside, let's start where viewers in Bosch's time would have begun, with the exterior panels. When closed, the triptych shows something deceptively simple, a translucent sphere floating in darkness. Painted in grisaille, shades of gray, it depicts the third day of creation when God separated the waters from the earth. A tiny figure of God sits in the upper left corner, holding an open book. Above runs an inscription from Psalm 33:9. For he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stood firm. This serene beginning gives no hint of the psychedelic explosion of color and imagery waiting inside. It's like Bosch is saying, "Are you sure you want to open this? There's no going back." When the triptych opens, we're first greeted by the left panel, showing the Garden of Eden. Here is God introducing Eve to Adam, a surprisingly rare scene in art history. But this isn't your typical paradise. Yes, there are the usual suspects: Adam, Eve, and various animals, but Bosch's Eden is already tinged with something off. Strange hybrid creatures scuttle across the ground. A cat carries away a mouse or rat in its mouth, a hint of predation in paradise. In the background, a giraffe and elephant, exotic animals that would have seemed almost mythical to European viewers, mingle with unicorns and other fantastic beasts. A dragon tree looms ominously, while from a lake rises a bizarre pink fountain that looks more like something from a fever dream than divine architecture. Most telling is Adam's expression as he gazes at Eve. Is it wonder, desire, or something darker? Even in this moment of innocence, Bosch suggests humanity's fall is already set in motion. The snake, traditionally shown tempting Eve with the apple, is here quietly coiled around a tree trunk, watching and waiting. And now we come to the main event, the central panel that gives the triptych its modern name. Here, Bosch's imagination explodes in a panorama of nude figures, fantastical creatures, oversized fruits, and crystalline structures that defy architectural logic. It's like paradise has gone through a funhouse mirror, emerging as something both alluring and deeply unsettling. Dozens of naked figures, men and women of all races, engage in various activities. At first glance, it might look like a scene of pure pleasure, but look closer. There is something mechanical, almost robotic about their movements. They repeat the same actions over and over, trapped in cycles of seeming enjoyment that feel increasingly hollow. The landscape is dotted with impossible structures, towers made of crystal and stone that sprout like mushrooms, pools filled with bathers who seem both ecstatic and trapped, giant birds and fish that dwarf the humans around them. Oversized strawberries and other fruits suggest abundance, but their scale makes them monstrous rather than appetizing. In the center, a circular pool contains women bathing while men ride around them on various beasts: horses, unicorns, griffins, and other creatures. It's like a carousel gone mad, an endless parade of desire that leads nowhere. Above, floating in the sky, more impossible structures house more figures engaged in mysterious activities. One of the most striking elements is a group of figures in the foreground, humans covered in hair or fur, suggesting a regression from civilization back to an animal state. A man clothed in dark robes, the only fully dressed figure in the panel, points to a sleeping woman inside a transparent bubble or cave. His expression is knowing, almost conspiratorial. But what secret does he share with us? If the central panel shows humanity lost in pleasure, the right panel shows the price to be paid. Here, Bosch unleashes a nightmarish version of hell that makes Dante's Inferno look tame by comparison. The pastoral landscape has been replaced by a dark, burning cityscape. The pleasant pink and blue hues of the central panel give way to sickly greens, browns, and the orange glow of fires. Human figures are no longer frolicking. They're being tortured in ways that range from the grotesque to the absurdly specific. A man is forced to eternally vomit into a well. Another has been turned into a living harp, his limbs stretched across strings. A giant bird-headed creature, seated on what appears to be a toilet throne, devours humans and defecates them into a pit below. But the most striking figure is the tree man in the center, a hollow-bodied creature with a cracked egg torso perched atop bare tree trunks. His face, turned to gaze directly at the viewer, has been suggested to be a self-portrait of Bosch himself. Inside his broken body, tiny figures sit around a table in a tavern-like setting, while atop his head perches a disc supporting a giant bagpipe, an instrument often associated with lust in medieval imagery. What makes The Garden of Earthly Delights so compelling isn't just its fantastic imagery, it's how Bosch uses sophisticated artistic techniques to draw us in. The triptych's colors progress from the peaceful greens and blues of Eden through the candy-like pinks and reds of the center panel to the dark, fiery tones of hell. This color journey mirrors humanity's fall from grace. The scale of objects and figures constantly shifts, creating a dreamlike atmosphere where nothing can be trusted. Fruit grows to massive size while humans shrink to inhabit eggshells and animal hollows. This playing with scale makes viewers feel disoriented, mirroring the moral disorientation Bosch may be commenting on. Most impressively, Bosch pays incredible attention to detail. Every inch of the painting contains something worth examining. Tiny figures engage in bizarre activities in the background. Strange hybrid creatures lurk in corners. The longer you look, the more you discover, and the more questions you have. But what was Bosch trying to say with this bizarre masterpiece? While scholars have debated the painting's meaning for centuries, several themes emerge clearly. First, there's a warning about the transient nature of earthly pleasures. The central panel may look like paradise, but it leads directly to hell. The pleasures depicted are hollow and ultimately destructive. Second, there's a commentary on human nature itself. Are we truly different from animals? The painting suggests that despite our pretensions to civilization, we're easily reduced to our base instincts. Third, there's a sense of cosmic order being disrupted. The peaceful creation scene on the exterior gives way to increasingly chaotic scenes inside, suggesting humanity's role in disrupting divine harmony. What's remarkable about The Garden of Earthly Delights is how modern it feels. Despite being painted over 500 years ago, its themes of pleasure, excess, and environmental disorder feel incredibly relevant today. The painting's surreal imagery wouldn't look out of place in a contemporary art gallery. Its warning about the consequences of unchecked desire and environmental exploitation resonates in our era of climate crisis and constant consumption. The way it depicts humans becoming lost in pleasure while ignoring consequences feels particularly pointed in our age of digital distraction and environmental neglect. Perhaps what makes The Garden of Earthly Delights so enduring is that it refuses to be fully understood. Like all great art, it raises more questions than it answers. Was Bosch warning us against sin, or creating a more complex commentary on human nature? Was he a religious moralist or a sophisticated satirist? Was he depicting nightmares or warnings of real spiritual dangers? The painting has been housed in Madrid's Prado Museum since 1939, but its mysteries remain as fresh as ever. Each generation finds new meanings in its bizarre imagery, and each viewer sees something different in its complex symbolism. In the end, The Garden of Earthly Delights is both beautiful and terrifying because it shows us ourselves, our desires, our fears, our capacity for both pleasure and cruelty. Its beauty draws us in, but its darker elements force us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. The painting suggests that paradise is easily lost, that pleasure can become torture, and that the line between heaven and hell might be thinner than we think. In its endless detail and mysterious symbolism, it reminds us that some questions have no easy answers, and some mysteries resist explanation. As you leave this painting, you might find yourself changed, more aware of life's complexity, more attuned to its mysteries, and perhaps a bit more humble about humanity's place in the grand scheme of things. And isn't that what great art is supposed to do? What do you think Bosch was trying to tell us? Do you see this as a warning about human nature? Or is there another message hidden in its bizarre imagery? Share your theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear your interpretations of this fascinating work. If you enjoyed this deep dive into art history's strangest masterpiece, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to ring that notification bell too. We'll be exploring more fascinating artworks that changed the world, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.